Good morning, guys. Do me a favor, raise the volume. It's another early morning video before I run off to work, and I don't want to wake up my wife, so I'm going to try and keep my voice low, which is very hard for me. But speaking of my wife, you could do me another favor. She was looking for an old video I had posted with my grandkids singing happy birthday to me a couple of years ago. I think it's a short, so she couldn't find it. So I went to help her, and I noticed that she wasn't subscribed to me, and I know she's subscribed, but she didn't notice because she never goes on social media. Her and my youngest son have like zero social media time. I mean, screen time. Like it's pretty cool. In fact, when I interview my son coming up, I'm going to ask him about that. How he's a Gen Z father with 3 kids and no social media. That's pretty cool. So, but anyway, getting back to the unsubscribing thing. So I said, yo, do me a favor, subscribe. And it's not that she unsubscribed. If you followed me for a while, you know, after the 2020 election, I gave my honest opinion and YouTube didn't like it. They demonetized me for about 6 months, meaning, you know, the commercials, they pay you a few cents for commercials. They weren't paying me, but, you know, but another thing they were doing was unsubscribing people. I had friends and family telling me all the time, man, I'm unsubscribed. And so I had made an announcement to you guys, hey, check, see if you're subscribed. And a lot of people in the comments like, yeah, they unsubscribed me too. It's called shadow banning, where they unsubscribe people and they don't send out your video to a lot of places. You know, they do that if they don't like you. Some people like me, some people don't. So what are you going to do? So anyway, the favor I'm going to ask is check, see if you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. I mean, it costs you nothing, and it helps me get cool guests. You know, I've had Scott Hahn, I've had Steve Ray, I had Archbishop Timothy Broglio, president of USCCB, and I couldn't have gotten these guys on if I didn't have you guys subscribing to me. And I got some pretty big name guys in the pipeline. We can arrange our schedules together, Lord willing. But today I want to talk about the lies Mel Gibson told to Joe Rogan about the Catholic Church. Now, I'm not saying he maliciously, knowingly lied. I believe that he believes these lies because he was born into a sedevacantist family. He wasn't born into a Catholic family. A lot of people think he's Catholic. He even says in the video to Joe Rogan, he's not part of the Catholic religion today. The Catholic religion today, in his view, is an apostasy. He belongs to the real church. So he grew up with a sedevacantist father who was just pounded in his head that the Catholic Church is evil, the popes are anti-popes, anti-Christ, and he believes this. So he's just repeating lies. And the last video I did about him, I talked about his mental health that he discussed with Joe Rogan. He talked about his mental illness and the demons that were oppressing him. We discussed that. And in it, I said, if I have time to make another video, I'll address the lies and debunk them one by one. And a lot of you guys put in the comments, yeah, please do. So they kind of overlap, but I'll go in the order he did them, with a little overlapping, I guess. And it's really sad. Before I get into this, I just want to say it's very sad because I've been watching Rogan for years. You know, I've seen the first UFC, I think in like 1990. I was going to a, back then there was no such, they didn't call it mixed martial arts. They called it freestyle karate. And we would do grappling, like shoot wrestling, judo, and Muay Thai, kickboxing, and regular Western boxing. And we had these jiu-jitsu guys come in nobody ever heard of, called the Gracies. And they did like 5 Gracie brothers. There was Hickson, Horian, Hoyce, Hoyler. I mean, now to get one of these guys would probably cost you $10,000. But all these guys came because no one ever heard of them. It was before the UFC started, and it was like $25 for the seminar. And a bunch of the guys actually took a van. I was working, of course, I couldn't go, but a bunch of the guys took a van to see the first UFC, and Hoyce had them sit up front, close to the ring, you know, the cage rather. and the rest is history. But so I've always been a fan of the UFC, and I noticed the guys talking about it were like traditional martial artists, you know, the sports announcers, and they're like, we're clueless. So then when Joe Rogan came, I think it was like the 5th or 6th one, I was like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about, and everybody fell in love with Joe Rogan. So it's sad because he's always been like a liberal atheist dude, and he's starting to see, he's very smart, and he asks a lot of questions. So he's becoming more conservative in his political views, and he's being more open to Christianity. And he just had a Protestant Bible scholar on that kind of opened his eyes about things. His name was Wes Huff. But then when it got on Catholicism, he kind of bashed Catholicism. And I seen Joe Rogan before with Eddie Bravo, speaking of mixed martial arts. When I came down here to Florida, I went to a Jeet Kune Do. That was Bruce Lee started Jeet Kune Do. It was kind of like the first mixed martial art. And the jiu-jitsu we did in there was 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu because it was no gi. And so Jeet Kune Do, you don't wear gi, you don't wear a uniform, you just wear what you would in a street fight. And 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu made a lot of sense to me because in a street fight, you're not going to have a gi on to choke people out. And Eddie Bravo was the founder of that. Phenomenal jiu-jitsu guy, brilliant in jiu-jitsu, but ignorant of religion. And I seen him on with Joe Rogan, just coming up with the most ridiculous conspiracy theories about the Catholic Church. And they both are, the Catholic Church is wicked, it's evil. And then, Wes Huff kind of adds to that. He didn't give like really ridiculous stuff, but basically said we're like a false gospel. And then Sedevacantis, who thinks he's a Catholic, all heretics thinks they're the true Catholics, but we're not. Like Mel Gibson's belief is that if you believe the Pope is the Pope, you're not Catholic. You're in schism. Only his people that don't believe the Pope is the Pope, very small amount of people, are the true Catholic Church. And I put up a video from a Lutheran pastor. He believes the same thing, that the Lutherans are the true Catholics, that Catholics went into schism after Trent, and they're the true Catholics. So it was very sad because now Rogan thinks he's talking about a Catholic. He's like, man, if this Catholic is telling me the Catholic Church is evil, and even said that is the most wicked, evil thing ever. And like, yeah. He's like, he's all, Mel Gibson all scattered. Yeah, the Catholic Church is evil. So it was really sad because I feel like God is calling Rogan, and you got Protestants pushing away from the Catholic Church, and then you got Mel Gibson, a Sedevacantis, pushing them even further away. And then you have Catholics on YouTube celebrating. I don't even want to name their names because there's so many, celebrating, like gushing over this guy, like sycophants or fanboys, how awesome it was Mel Gibson went on Joe Rogan and bashed our church and bashed our popes. It just blows my mind. It's like, I don't get it. So I'm just going to get to the lies he said, whether he believes them or not. These were provable, debunked lies. First one he says about our church is Pope Benedict. Well, he don't call him Pope Benedict because he don't believe in Pope. Call him Benedict, and the guy they got in here now, very disrespectful. Both Benedict covered up for the pedophile priest, and Pope Francis is covering up today. Well, according to Jason Barry, who's no friend of the Catholic Church, he's the journalist who investigated the Catholic Church scandal of child sex abuse. Jason Barry was a guy who they made the movie Spotlight. He kind of directed, gave him all the information. So Jason Barry is an investigative reporter, no friend of the Catholic Church. And he said Pope Benedict made a lot of progress with transparency and stopping sex abuse, but Pope Francis is head and shoulders above everybody. He's fixed this crisis, basically. And just to give you an example, Jason Barry said the transparency of Pope Francis, he believed the transparency, the investigation, the tightening of rules, priests with children, that caused it. But I'm going to tell you another reason that caused it in a second that he won't say because he's a liberal. But the Department of Education did a study on sex abuse in the Department of Education from 1992 to 2002, a 10-year study. And Dr. Shakeshift, who was in charge of the research, and she had like hundreds of top researchers researching it, said the United States Department of Education sex abuse problem is 100 times worse than the Catholic Church at its highest point, because there was 300,000 in a 10-year period allegations of child sex abuse against United States public school teachers in a 10-year period. And she said that's compared to a 50-year period of the Catholic Church where there were 10,000 allegations. And most of those took place decades ago. And when you hear news reports, if you think it's a new one, and every time I look, it's always a reporting old stuff that's come up again because now there's a new person in that group suing. But most of them took place decades ago. Now, 10,000 is despicable, but I said most of them took place decades ago. And in fact, according to Georgetown University, did an in-depth study of this. In 2023, there were only 3 allegations. I believe this is the United States. They don't say, they just said three allegations in the Catholic Church against priests. Compared that with the Chicago public school system. Now they haven't done another big national investigation of the public school system. They just did take cities. The city of Chicago, in that same year where the Catholic Church of the United States had 3, city of Chicago had 3,100. And according to Boz Tajidovin, who is Billy Graham's grandson, he was the lead sex crimes investigator for the Florida Attorney General. Now he does private, he's a private lawyer for religious sex abuse. You know, he helps people sue and he investigates. According to Boz Tajidovin, Protestant and evangelical churches have a 2 to 3 times worse rate of child sex abuse. So this is a lie that Pope Benedict and Pope Francis covered up. Rogan spewed another lie. It was an allegation, it's never been proven. There's no evidence that Pope Benedict moved a priest that molested like 100 deaf boys. And, of course, Mel Gibson's like, yeah, really evil. Give me a drink. I don't mean to make fun of him, but I'm just telling you how it went down. And it's ironic. It's ironic because this is a great book by Bill Donahue, The Truth About Clergy Sex Abuse. He gives you the receipts. He gives you all the data. And I'll just show you. He shows like in 1970, there were 6,100 allegations of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. And then from 2012 to 2019, like he gives it like every year, but I'll just give you those. 2012, 6, 13, 7, 14, 6, 15, 7, 2016, 2, 2017, 6, 2018, 3, 2019, 8. The 2023 one I got from a different news source. I'm not going to pull it up right now, but you can look it up. So Pope Francis is not covering up for child sex abuse. And in fact, there's a big controversy. People are saying, people are lying again. Pope Francis is allowing gay men into seminary. And what this is about was in 2005, Pope Benedict was asked, what if someone was gay, but he's not gay anymore, and he's taking a vow of celibacy, can we let him in? And so Benedict said in 2005 in this document, if it's not deep-seated, if it's fleeting, like he was a teenager and he thought about it but never acted on it, it's up to the bishop to discern if this guy, amongst everything else, is this guy truly converted, loves the Lord, loves the church, has, the fruit of self-control, then you can allow him in. But if it's deep-seated, where he constantly thinks about this, no. Or if he's practicing it, no. But if he haven't had these thoughts in 3 years, he had them when he maybe was young, they were fleeting, but he hasn't had these thoughts in 3 years. And of course, he's committing to a vow of celibacy. It's up to the bishop to decide. That was Pope Benedict's rule in 2005. Well, a couple of years ago, Pope Benedict, talking to Italian bishops, said, no, we found out that this sex abuse was done by homosexuals. We cannot allow homosexuals into the seminary. I don't care if he says he's not a homosexual. If you see a hint of femininity, don't let him in. So the Italian bishops came back recently and like, okay, well, what do you mean? Pope Benedict said this, you're saying don't let him in if there's a hint of femininity. And I don't see a contradiction in that, because if it was fleeting, if a kid was confused and it was fleeting, he may not have a hint of femininity if he doesn't have deep-seated. So the Italian bishops came out with a document and asked Pope Francis to approve it, and he did. And all it did was repeat the 2005 document that Pope Benedict said. If a man had fleeting homosexual tendencies but hasn't had them in 3 years, and they're not deep-seated, like he doesn't constantly think about it, and he's never practiced it, and isn't practicing it, and takes a vow of celibacy, it's up to the bishop's discernment. So he didn't change anything. He just clarified what he said when he said, don't let homosexuals in, not even a hint of femininity. Because, Pope Francis talks off the cuff. He says things like the Italian word faggotry, which you can figure out the English word. He said, we can't have that in seminary, and we can't have that in our clergy. He said it twice. He said it once, the media ripped him apart, and like 2 weeks later, he said it again. It's how he talks. He's just a man, he's just a regular man on the street. He's a bouncer. He's a regular guy. But it's kind of ironic. In the same interview, Mel Gibson is praising Viganò. So Viganò is an excommunicated Catholic who back in, I think it was 2012, I did a video, I forget the year, but you can look it up. He was supposed to oversee an investigation of a homosexual bishop named Bishop Nistat. And all the priests around him were telling him, yeah, this guy's bad news. He needs to be excommunicated. And they said that he became very friendly with this homosexual priest. They said they were very friendly. So I'm saying they were very friendly. And he shut down the investigation. And the priests that brought up the charges against this bishop were furious. They said there was no reason for him to shut down the investigation. And then later on, it was proven he was a homosexual and he had to resign in disgrace. This is Viganò. Then a couple of years later, he was put in charge of watching McCarrick, who we know was a homosexual predator. And the 2018 report on this came out, showed pictures of these guys partying, having champagne together, traveling. He wasn't supposed to let them travel. Pope Benedict said, don't let him travel. He traveled with this guy. After the report came out, Pope Francis laicized McCarrick. He's no longer a cardinal in the church. Oh, I don't know the technicality, but he's laicized. He can't work for the church. And so what did Viganò do? He turned around and said, no, it wasn't me. Like the movie The Warriors, when they got caught, he's like, it wasn't me, it was the warrior. The warrior did it. Just like a weasel, Viganò pointed the finger at the Pope. And some people believed him for whatever reason. I didn't believe him because I already researched this guy, because a friend of mine came out and told me, hey, he was a Protestant anti-Catholic, but he's like, hey, I don't like the Catholic Church, but I like this bishop you got, Viganò. He's a big Trump supporter. And he knew I was a Trump supporter. But just because we agree on politics doesn't mean we agree on religion. So I looked at him, I'm like, I don't know, something ain't right about this guy in my spirit. So I Googled him and I find he's worth like $25 million. I'm like, how is a bishop worth $25 million? This is odd. And then he got convicted in a court of law in Italy for stealing $2 million from his brother. And his brother, under oath, said, or I don't know if they did it under oath, but in court, risking perjury if he was lying, saying, yeah, my brother lied to Pope Benedict. He said he needed to stay in Rome to take care of me because I was disabled. He said, I haven't seen my brother in years. I was in Chicago when he was in Rome stealing my money. So he was ordered to pay back the $2 million to his brother. Then his sister had to bring him to court in Switzerland, I believe it was, because he did the same thing to her, but with her it was like $200,000. So he's twice convicted of stealing from his family, lying to the Pope. And his brother also said that he would lie about what he's worth. He's like, said, I want to be cardinal one day. Don't tell anybody. It won't look good if they know I'm worth $25 million. So that's Viganò, who Mel Gibson thinks is a hero. And he quotes Mel Gibson. He quotes Viganò saying, Viganò, we got a Bishop Viganò. And he says there's a parallel church now. He agrees with me that the church isn't really the church. We're the church, the ones that don't believe the Pope is a Pope. So it's no surprise that Viganò joined the cult called the Resistance, who just a few years ago was busted by the authorities in England for hiding 2 predator priests. Go figure, I mean, and the group that he went to they believe like Gibson, after 1958, the church went into apostasy. So their bishop, excommunicated Richard Williamson, reordained, which is a grave sin, Viganò. And they rebaptized Catholics who were baptized after 1958 because they don't believe their baptism is valid. And a little more on interesting note on Williamson. He was twice excommunicated by Pope St. John Paul II, and then begged to have that lifted to Pope Benedict. And so Pope Benedict lifted it, but then right after that, he was in disobedience, And, disobedience is evil. 1 Timothy 15:23 maybe says rebellion is a sin of witchcraft. So these people are demonically inspired, I believe. So Williamson disobeyed, defied Pope Benedict like he did Pope St. John Paul II, and he was excommunicated again. And at that time, he was a member of the SSPX, and he was too heretical for the SSPX, so they threw him out. That's why he started this cult called the Resistance. Now, if you're too heretical for the SSPX, that's like being too racist for the KKK. I'm just saying. So this is the guy Viganò is under, and probably he's like 95, so he's probably hoping he's going to die, and Viganò is going to be their Pope next, I'm sure that's the plan of Viganò, why he took this route. But it's interesting that Williamson is also a Holocaust denier. He said there were no gas chambers, that the Nazis didn't kill them, they died of starvation, but, poor plan or whatever, the Holocaust deniers, what they say. And he actually got caught, him and Marcel Lefebvre, the founder of the SSPX, when he was still part of the SPX, they got caught, the SSPX in Europe got caught hiding a Nazi war criminal that the authorities were looking for. And they said, we thought he was just a homeless man. We gave him a place to live. And the authorities said, that's such bullcrap. They didn't believe Lefebvre. They said, Lefebvre is lying. This guy's been here 20 years. You can let a homeless guy sleep here for 20 years. When we got all over the internet and on TV, no internet then TV, this guy we're looking for this guy. So they didn't believe Lefebvre. And Lefebvre's another guy, excommunicated. And, Lefebvre and Viganò both call the Pope an Antichrist. Viganò called Pope Francis an Antichrist. Lefebvre called Pope St. John Paul II an Antichrist. And Gibson loves these guys. But Lefebvre, he was confronted with a seminarian named Eric Urigauti. Again, he was very friendly. They say he was very close to the seminarian. So when the other seminarians and the professors, the lay people in the church said, this guy is a homo predator, he likes little boys, you need to kick this guy out, do not ordain him. Marcel Lefebvre punished all those people, punished them, put them out, fired, the one guy from the school, I think it was the principal from one of the schools that Urigauti was fooling around with kids. And then he, along with Williamson, had this guy ordained to the priesthood, Eric Urigauti, look him up. And the police records say that Williamson said that Marcel Lefebvre told Williamson, watch this guy like a hawk. So go figure. This is, and today, I just told you about how we've beat the crisis of sex abuse in the church. these small groups like the SSPX and Resistance, they're having major problems with sex abuse. Look at the SSPX sex abuse problem in Kansas. Look at it in South Africa. These small groups are having more sex abuse allegations than the whole entire 1.4 billion Catholic Church. And these are just small little cults with it, that broke away. So that's number one. Lie number one. Pope Francis and Pope Benedict covered up for sex abuse. Lie number two. He said, yeah, there hasn't been a pope since 1958. See, in 1958, after the pope was elected, white smoke came up. Then a few minutes later, black smoke came up. And that's because the real pope, this guy Cardinal Siri, was pushed out because for whatever reason, they didn't want him. And then John the 23rd came out and he took a, never before has anyone taken a prior pope's name. That's what he said. He might have misspoke, because then right after that, he said he took an anti-pope's. This guy not only took a pope's name, but took an anti-pope's name, John the 23rd. So we know that he's illegitimate. So he was an illegitimate pope, and every pope after it. So from 1958 today, the church has been in apostasy. This is what he's saying, except for him and his group and Viganò's group, which he admits he don't even go to church. He built a church, but he rarely gets to it, and he admits he's still a womanizer. And so it's kind of, that's a whole nother video. But he said Pope John 23rd took the name because he knew he was like kind of wink, wink. I'm not really the Pope, wink, wink. Trying to let people know because he was scared for his life or whatever reason. He didn't want to tell people the truth. But what's ironic is that was 1958. This theory, this lie didn't come out till 1980. 1980, 22 years later, the Sedevacantists started making this up. And all the cardinals agreed that Pope John 23rd was a pope. Even Cardinal Siri, and they had a great relationship. They were friends. He actually promoted them to like a high position within the Vatican, promoted Siri. So like, this is such a ridiculous conspiracy theory. The black smoke, I don't know. I wasn't there. I haven't read. I just heard him say it. I looked it up. I couldn't find the news reports that black smoke came up, but I never had a fireplace in my life. So maybe, after the smoke went up, they were cleaning it out and a little black puff came out and like, oh, look, who knows? But no one said that 22 years ago. No one said it in 1958. Think about that. 1958 to 1980, 22 years. No one mentioned that no one had this theory. It's called the Siri theory, that Cardinal Siri was the real pope. So this is where Sedevacantists started. Sedevacantists is just a Latin word meaning the seat is empty. These people in 1980 said there's no pope. And then they're like, why? And they went back and made up this story. This is the story. Now, this is what the Pope said why he took his name, if you want to know what he said. And if you like the church and are a faithful Catholic, you're going to believe what he said. If you're not a faithful Catholic and don't like the church, you're not going to believe what he said. Now, why wouldn't someone like him? Well, very interesting. Again, Mel Gibson is a Sedevacantist because he was raised a Sedevacantist. Mel Gibson's father was a Holocaust denier. Mel Gibson always skirts the issue. He never denies it, but he never answers straight up. Did the Holocaust happen? He always gets around it like a politician, very ambiguous when he talks about that because he don't want to ruin his Hollywood career. But when he was drunk and had that rant a few years ago, he kept saying that effing Jews start every effing war. The effing Jews are evil. So he has a hatred towards Jews, obviously. And ironically, Pope John 23rd, when he was a priest during World War II, risked his life saving many Jews. And after the war, supported Israel becoming a state. So that's the real reason they don't like this Pope, in my personal opinion. So why did John 23rd pick the name? He says, I will be called John, a name sweet to us because it is the name of our Father, dear to us because it is the name of the humble parish church where we were baptized. The solemn name of numberless cathedrals scattered throughout the world, including our own basilica, St. John Lateran. 22 Johns of indisputable legitimacy have been Pope, and almost all had a brief pontificate. We have preferred to hide the smallest foreign name behind this magnificent succession of Roman pontiffs. So he's saying only 22 of them were legitimate. So he took 23 because he didn't consider 23 being a pope. Like, it's right there. I don't know how people miss it. They miss it because they don't want to see it. Because they hate the Jews, and this guy saved the Jews. This guy loved the Jews. Pope Pius XII in World War II was responsible for hiding over 900,000 Jews and was given the highest civilian medal from the state of Israel. And the way they saved them, because a lot of priests, like Pope John the 23rd, when he was a priest, risked their life saving them. And over 2,000 priests were caught and killed, but they never gave up the secret that we were hiding the Jews in our church. And this is why the chief rabbi of Rome became a Catholic. And we all know the wonderful story of St. Maximilian Kolbe. But these people, they think that that's, one of the mistakes the church made was protecting the Jews. But it's funny, again, this theory, it's called the Siri theory, that in 1958, Cardinal Siri was the legitimate pope, and they pushed him out somehow. All these tough cardinals said, no, you're not going to be pope. Like they're mobsters, This is their theory. But it did come out to 22 years later. It's kind of like Patrick Coffin, 10 years after Pope Francis was pope, he came out and said, oh no, Benedict is the real pope. And like he gave like really bizarre reasons, because he still wears a white cassock, and he kind of, he gives like hand signals. When Pope Benedict, just like Cardinal Siri, praised Pope John 23rd and had a great relationship, Pope Benedict and Pope Francis had a great relationship. Pope Benedict always heaped praises on Pope Francis. In fact, said, when I see Pope Francis with the people, I realize I made the right decision. He's the man that God chose for the church at this time. And Pope Francis said, Pope Benedict was a father to me. I always went to him for fatherly advice. So they had a great relationship. But these conspiracy theorists like Patrick Coffin are like, Benedict was a good man, but he was weak and he was scared and he was a coward, basically saying he was a coward and gave in to the to the Mason Mafia or whatever they call these people that forced him out. But 10 years later, and when they said, so you're a sedevacantist, he's like, no, I'm not a sedevacantist. I'm a benevacantist. You can't make this stuff up. So he just made up a new word, Benedict. So the seat's not empty. The seat belongs to Benedict. And I was like, is this guy delusional? But I don't want to attack his mental health, but I don't want to go there. But what I'm saying is it's just so ridiculous. 10 years later, he becomes a benedictantist. And then when Pope Benedict dies, okay, so now you thought he was a legitimate pope. Now the seat is empty. So you're a sedevacantist. No, sedevacantist means that you don't believe there was a pope since 1958. I believe there was a pope up until now. No, the word, I'm not a Latin scholar, but I can Google what sedevacantist means. It means the seat is empty. So you are a sedevacantist. And you didn't think of this until 10 years later. And every cardinal, even the most conservative cardinals that have a lot of disagreement with the way Pope Francis handles things, says Pope Francis is a legitimate pope. So some guy on YouTube is going to say, no, he's not. And he's going to have a bunch of followers agree with him. This is a sad state of the church. What else? Oh, so number 3. This is Mel Gibson telling Joe Rogan basically what Eddie Bravo was talking about. And I was Protestant for 30 years, so I know how these Protestants think. Sedevacantist is just another type of Protestantism. They think they're the true church and we're in apostasy. And Eddie Bravo gave these phenomenal lies that, when I was a young evangelical, I used to read Jack Chick publications, look it up, and he would have these ridiculous lies that the Pope was an antichrist and all kind of evil and wicked pagan worship was going on in the Vatican. And when Eddie Bravo said it sounded so stupid, and then when Mel Gibson said it sounded just as dumb. But basically, the Pope Francis brought in a pagan idol and the hierarchies worshipped it. And Joe Rogan's buying it, hook, line, and sinker. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, they call it the Pachamama. So that lie has been debunked so many times by many religious scholars, but I'll just give you one. I'm sorry. Getting out of... getting my notes off. Father Deacon Anthony Drugani. So he's an Eastern Rite deacon, and they refer to their deacons as Father Deacon. He's a religious studies professor, so he studies religions, and he's familiar with the Pachamama. And he said that wasn't a Pachamama, number one. These were Amazon people that presented this carving to the Pope. He said, and they don't even know what Pachamama is there. He said Pachamama was worshipped in the Andes, whenever, back in the day. So it's not even, just because it's from South America doesn't, I'm living in Florida. It's a lot, Orlando, Florida is a lot different than North New Jersey, just saying. So these people in the Amazon were invited by Pope Francis because they were forgotten people. Just think about this for a second. These people are so deep in the Amazon, so far away from civilization. They get to see a priest once every 2 years. Think about that. And these people that came were devout Catholics. Again, this religious professor did a research on everybody there. They're all devout Catholics. But they don't get to see a priest but once every 2 years. So that means they can't get married for 2 years if the priest just came. They can't have confession. They can't have the Eucharist. They can't have Mass. So if you love the church, you would want to do everything you can to get a priest to these people. So Pope Francis gave the idea, he said to his bishops, let's research, for the Amazon, maybe we could have married men whose children are grown and they have been devout Catholics, and we can ordain them priests so we could feed our sheep in the Amazon. And of course, that was just ammunition for the anti-pope. Oh, this liberal pope wants to get rid of celibacy, even though he wants to change doctrine and dogma, even though it's not a doctrine or a dogma. It's a discipline that we ask some Latin Rite priests to do. Mostly Latin Rite priests, Eastern Rite priests can be married. Eastern Rite Catholic priests can be married. We have Anglican priests that came to the Latin Rite that were married, and we let them be priests, married with children. It's a discipline that has a spiritual benefit, but you have to weigh the spiritual benefit. If these people can't see a priest for 2 years, maybe it's better. And what Pope Francis said, if he's a married man whose children are grown, because you don't want to take away from your children, it's hard for, I've been a Protestant, and, pastor kids are usually the worst kids in the church because the pastor is so involved with the church. But his kids are grown, he's devout, he's only been married to one woman. The same rules as the Eastern Rite Catholics, that's all he was saying. And they blasted on YouTube, and there was so much resistance, it never happened. So he wanted to know these people, we didn't forget about you. So he invites these poor people. I mean, not only they're suffering, materially, very poor, but spiritually, they have no priest. So he invites them. What an honor to go see the Pope. I would cry if I got an invitation to see the Pope. So imagine these people, how honored they felt like, I'm just nobody. I'm just an uncivilized Amazonian, and the Pope is inviting us to the Vatican. So they bring some carvings. And in their minds, they carved Mary, because on the video, as clear as day, the woman said, Our Lady of the Amazon. Now, maybe there's not an official church teaching on Our Lady of the Amazon. I don't know. But in their uncivilized Amazonian minds, they were honoring our Blessed Mother, and they gave a gift to Pope Francis. And all the grifters on YouTube started saying, oh, this is Pachamama. And then misinformed people, good Catholics, believed them because, it was the people they trusted. Oh, this is the Pachamama. They're worshiping the Pachamama idol. And in fact, on my community board, a lot of people are misunderstanding. It was because the guy did the video was actually a sedevacantist, but I put in there, he's a sedevacantist, but he exposed the lies about the Pachamama. He believes the Pachamama is actually the Pachamama, an idol. He believes that carving, who the Amazonians said was Mother Mary, he believes that it's a Pachamama, and he kept calling it an idol in the video. So people are like, well, is it an idol or not? No, this man thought it was an idol, but that's not why I showed the video. If you go on my community boards, the last thing I posted, I put a little thing about the Pachamama, and then I put a link to this video this guy made. It's like 8 minutes long. And this gentleman exposed the father of the hoax, Taylor Marshall. He's the guy who said it was the Pachamama. And they showed him like 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I'm not shaving, 5 o'clock in the morning. It'll be 5 o'clock in the morning an hour from now. But anyway, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not shaving, but I just got text from this guy in Rome, and he's going to post this video. He threw the Pachamama in the river. And then he interviews the guy, and he's like, how do you say your name? And the guy pronounces his name, goes, oh, that's how you say it. So he's acting like he don't know the guy. And he's like, we didn't know your face. We didn't know your name, but to us, you were a hero. We need to fund this guy, give this guy some money, maybe start a GoFundMe. But then the gentleman who made the video shows a video a couple months later, and the guy's on Taylor Marshall's show and says, yeah, he said, I guess he didn't know he wasn't supposed to say it, because Taylor Marshall goes, I wasn't ready to say that. And then Taylor Marshall took the video down, but this guy saved it. And the guy's like, yeah, we met in Rome. That was cool. Me and you met, and you paid for my airfare. You told me the plan to throw it in, and you told me send you the video and you'll upload it. And that's what I did. As soon as I texted you, said, the plane's off the ground in Rome. You uploaded the video and edited it for me. But in the prior video, he said that he uploaded the video. So they were both caught lying. Like that, in a normal world, that would end your career. You lied to me, you're dead to me. But he has so many sycophants and fanboys that they got mad at me for posting that. They're like, oh, so making money off of doing something good is bad? I'm like, no, making money off of a lie is something bad. So if you want to check that video out, I wish I knew how to connect it to this one. I would do it right now, but I don't, I work for a living. But just saying, I'll be leaving here shortly. I'm looking at the time. But just go to the community board, and I have a little rant about the Pachamama, and then I got the link down there. And remember, the guy's a sedevacantist. Just like Mel Gibson, he thinks that we're in apostasy. And it's funny because Taylor Marshall was one of these guys that celebrated. He actually had a video, so let's celebrate Mel Gibson's interview with Joe Rogan. And he was gushing over him. It was like kind of creepy. He was gushing over him like he was the head of his fan club. It was kind of weird. But oh man, I lost my train of thought. But he was celebrating Mel Gibson lying about the Catholic Church. This was the point I was going to make. But according to Mel Gibson, Taylor Marshall isn't even a Catholic. According to Mel Gibson, I'm not a Catholic. You're not a Catholic. If you believe the Pope's a Pope, you're not a Catholic. Because he thinks the church is an apostasy. So which is kind of ironic. And then the fourth lie, I guess this was the last one, and then he went on about his mental health issues and having holes in his brains and having demons, making him angry. That's what I did the last video about, if you want to check that out. But he tells Joe Rogan the church is an apostasy. Right now, the church is apostate. It's an apostasy. And the word apostasy doesn't mean heretical or schismatic. It means you totally reject Christianity, 100% turn from the faith. You fell from grace. You're lost. You're gone. You're outside the church. You're the apostasy. And he said that happened in 1958. So none of us who were born into the church after 1958 are Catholics, according to Mel Gibson. And this is the same lie that the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses tell their followers. They say it happened after the last apostle died. The Catholic Church went into apostasy. Our Protestant brothers and sisters will say after St. Thomas Aquinas died, because they love St. Thomas Aquinas. But usually they'll say after Trent, we went into apostasy, or around Trent, a little later than, But it's funny, when I was a Protestant, I loved Thomas Aquinas, and I was like, yeah, if he was alive on the Reformation, he would have been a Protestant. And the sedevacantists, like Mel Gibson and the guy who made that video, I think his name is Peter Diamond, not sure. They believe the church went in apostasy in 1958. And it's funny, they all know that the church Jesus started, the Mormons, the Protestants, the sedevacantists, the church that Jesus started was the Catholic Church. They just say they left. Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against my church. Hallelujah. Matthew 16:18. So every cult, every breakaway from the Catholic Church will say they're the true Catholics and we're the ones that are in apostasy. But Jesus Christ said the gates of hell will not prevail against my church. So who are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? Believe Jesus, because throughout history, there have been heretics and schismatics saying the same thing. St. Athanasius in 325 AD stood for the faith boldly against Irenaeus, who was telling the church the Trinity is untrue. From the very beginning, St. Paul was blasting the Gnostics that were saying Jesus didn't come in the flesh. In every age of the church, there's been people saying the Catholic Church is in apostasy. And they're true. They're right. This small little group has this hidden secret. The rest of us are deceived. Don't believe it. Don't fall for it. Don't support channels who support these guys. And above all, stay Catholic.